Well, there's something called induction that we're going to start studying in 3 or 4 weeks. So induction is a case where if something repeats, if something, you're going to have to write this down because we'll be covering this in great detail. If something repeats through time, so if something repeats through time in a predictable way, you can probably predict in the future that it's going to happen again in the same way. Okay, so the easiest example is every moment of my life to this point the sun has come up. So, and it came up today, so probably the best prediction is it's going to come up tomorrow. Okay, because you've got thousands of instances, never missed, so it's a real simple prediction. Just say, it's repeating, so I can say inductively, it'll happen tomorrow. Okay, so back with medicine, if there is, you have to use the same, this process may help you with that. So you made a good point, you can't see everything. You can't read every book to know every little detail. You can't see everything to know every little thing. You can't test everything out. So a lot of empirical stuff, most of it's outside of our scope. So something like this, you have to use induction. So, for example, if there's a doctor who you trust, who just is right, and it's a big step 3 or 4 times, probably the 5th, she or he may be again. That's what you would do. The kind of a small sample. It's not like sunrises, 1,000 sunrises. You've got 3 though, 3 or 4, let's say 4. So you might just go with it. And then see, okay, I'm not going to do all the research to see if she or he's right. I'll just go with it, I believe what they're saying. So that would be an inductive, that's not empirical. That's a logical conclusion, which we'll come to, or which we'll discuss, we're not going to discuss empiricism, obviously. This is a logical conclusion we'll come to. Now, let's take a different angle. So say you're in alternative medicine, and that's where you don't use like the chemical drugs, you use plants and stuff. Say you're the doctor you follow, same story. You found this doctor that wrote a book, and 3 or 4 times your kid got sick or something. You can tell I'm talking from personal experience. Your kid got sick, and you were trying to find out how to get him better, and this one book helped you. So the next time you got a whole bookshelf of alternative medicine books, you go to that book and look it up, and you'll say probably that's my best bet. And I'll probably just take their word for it, what the book says. So that'd be one way. So you're a really good question there.
You're not being a critical thinker.
Pardon?
And you're not being a critical thinker.
Not as much as, empiricism. Because prediction, induction involves prediction. Prediction is weaker than direct empirical analysis by a long way. That's what you're picking up on, I think. So yeah, some things will have no choice. And the critical thinking seriousness, or whatever you want to say, does go down. Maybe like with the sun prediction, well, there's so many instances of the sun, maybe then, since it's prediction, rather than direct empirical observation, it just seems like, that's a pretty strong critical thinking prediction. But, so because you've got so many samples of sunrises, so many instances to make the next prediction. But if you have just 3 or 4, yeah, that goes way down. I think that's a good point you're making. So the critical thinking is not perfect. It's just thousands of times better than what you've been taught so far. Culture thinking. You were stuck. Okay. You. Yes.
Well, couldn't it be empirical too? Because wouldn't it be like if your experience just keeps happening, it's kind of like a deja vu?
It's based on empirical findings. Yeah. If you see the sun go up or see the doctors predict things, you're seeing something. So you break a prediction on empirical finding. So it's not completely non-empirical. It's definitely logical because it's inductive, but it's based on empirical. So this class will say it's. Well, you're going to see in these notes. It's safer to do that than compare this to a doctor you don't know, for example. Just hope they're right the first time, whether it's alternative medicine or orthodox. Cross your fingers. There's a lot of bad doctors in both fields. So, that can be compared if you've got a couple of empirical instances to base your prediction on.
But you have the choice to believe the doctor or not to believe him.
Okay.
Good.
I like it. Yeah, right.
You got a choice to believe. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's choice. We'll talk about that a bit. Empiric being, what kind of, you do have a choice of what kind of thinking you're going to adopt. You're going to be an empiricist. The opposite of empiricist is called a rationalist.
Right.
We'll be talking about that in these notes here in just a minute. Or are you going to be, do you think mathematical information? Or maybe you think, common sense cultural things are the best. A lot of people do. I bet you a lot of people, in fact, are not with us here and thinking, everything's just saying, I believe common sense views. That's funny to do, yeah.
Can't we say empiricism is actually induction? Because we say most of the time our senses are correct, but I mean, we already know that.
This induction is life. People are doing this to some degree or another. Most people just do it incredibly sloppy, never check their inductive processes, but this is your whole life is based on this. I mean, if, the alarm clock goes off, you're going to go to, you're anticipating the alarm clock going off. When you're went to the bar, you're out till 2, you're going to bed, and you subconsciously don't set the alarm clock right. No, just kidding. So when the alarm clock goes off at 6, you know by induction from the last 10 times you did that you're going to feel like crap. So induction, you make predictions all day, all the time. You know that all of you are going to make predictions sitting right here in this room. You know you're going to get bored or something, or you know I'm going to pace back and forth, or break shock or something like that. Anybody else have anything? Nobody?
Well, I kind of like the second part of this.
Okay.
So with
All the chalk's down here. Sorry?
With empiricism, the only thing that we know is what we can see, right?
Yeah.
So how can you see empiricism?
Oh, it's an assumption. Empiricism will be, it's not a proof. It's just a view that one adopts and says, okay, this is what I think gives the best information. I can't prove it. We're going to try to give a good argument for it here in these notes, but I can't prove it. If these notes are correct, well, we think it's the best way to know things. Over and over, it seems like empirical information gives us the best way to know things, but do I ever really know? No, it's just a way of life.
Yeah, but
really.
Wouldn't that one statement just kind of disprove the whole thing?
It depends how serious you want to take that statement, but the answer I think would be yes, probably. I mean, if you want sure, I think what you're saying is, how do we really, really know without it? Like 2 + 2 = 4 every time, sure knowledge. Empiricism won't give you that ever. It's always going to be questioned, which is one of the reasons I like it personally. But so it won't give you the kind of information you're talking about might be mathematical. But even that gets, who's taking a class like proofs or differential equation, or not, higher than that, some of the geometries and stuff. I mean, that stuff gets a little fuzzy. There's even classes called fuzzy logic and fuzzy algebra. Yeah?
Can you explain a little bit more between the difference of rational and empirical?
It's coming in notes. It'll be hit big time. I think the next thing. Somebody else had a hand up? Yeah, sorry. It is.
To touch on this, but I think what you're trying to say is, like, for something to be true in empiricism, you have to see it through your senses, but you can't.
It's true.
You can't.
It's true to see the little t here. It's not truth. It's not truth. I've done that my whole teaching career. See, this is like God is real. There's just no question. This is, I think that my empirical experience is right. See the difference there? This is not absolute knowledge.
I'm saying you can't use your senses to understand empiricism.
Oh, yeah, you can't self-check. Yeah. I think that is, I got that out of what you're saying too. It's a good point. Yeah, empiricism is just...
If it's something that you really have to use your senses, you can't use your senses to understand empiricism.
Yeah, more or less, I think that's right, yeah. From what maybe I was thinking about it for 10 minutes or so, but I think I'm with you on that. Has anybody taken ethics? Ever? Okay. Well, there's a theory called cultural relativism in there. It's the idea that there's really no truth. Everything's relative, These people over here in this part of the world think, the world is flat. These people over here think it's square. These people think it's round. And who knows? None of those are true. It's all just beliefs. It's a really strong model or philosophy.
So like man is measure all things.
Pardon?
So like man is measure all things, kind of.
Yeah, not that heroic, but in that line, yeah. So that goes kind of what you're saying. I mean, people have attacked cultural relativism and said, okay, if you think cultural relativism is true, is the theory of cultural relativism itself relative? See, it's a contradiction because it advertises itself as being a model of reality, but it has to be relative. But relatives out there don't want it to be relative. Because if everything's relative, it's relative. So empiricism would have the same criticism. Any philosophy has the same criticism applied to it. So, good point. Very good point. So, if you want absolute proof, surest knowledge of all, I would think math is the best way to go. But even that, we're probably centuries away from having math really give us absolute knowledge to a high degree. 2 + 2 = 4. I mean, is that absolute knowledge? That might be. It depends though, because when remember the quantum particles we talked about the last time, the little building blocks that make up everything? Down there, these kinds of statements don't make sense. So maybe that's not absolute truth. So even that, I don't know. Maybe we're just creatures. Remember how we talked last week? Humans really, this is such a good point, in my opinion. This is a good point. Humans really aren't the type of creatures that can have lots and lots of knowledge. Okay, remember how we talked about your thought stream one after the other, and then we thought maybe there's just a couple thought streams inside you? Well, that's not going to get you much knowledge. I mean, if we're left with things like empiricism and logic and math, and trying to really know a lot of stuff, it could be the case that humans just really might not know much. It just might be that our whole nature is not to be an information species. Okay? Now, we have a lot of information. Yes, we've got more than chimpanzees and caterpillars. We know that. But forget that. Forget that comparison. Us, ourselves, we don't, what do you really think you know? Really, I bet you anything you say, I can tear it apart so much you'll be saying, okay, I don't know. You're not sure. So maybe we're actually supposed to be poets. Maybe our real nature is to be religious speakers, or poets, or artists, and we just don't know it. We're stuck in the information age, information culture, and it's really, we're fish out of water. You know, maybe that's where depression comes from. This is just speculative. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say it if I didn't think there was interesting points to be made here that could be right. I mean, we live in the more we become an information age, the more Prozac use goes up. You know, I mean, there's a lot of strange things going on where humans seem to be, I mean, they didn't have Prozac in American Indian culture. How many of you knew that in primitive cultures around the world, anorexia doesn't exist? I mean, I don't know if that's just what I've read in anthropology books. Okay, now that is unbelievable if that's true. Anorexia is sort of bizarre. I don't say that in a derogatory sense. I mean, it's really a sort of an interesting, almost not otherworldly. It's a, okay, stop being polite. Bizarre phenomenon. Okay, it's a mind thing, I guess. I don't understand it. I'm not professing to understand it. So why do we get it in Western civilized cultures and primitive cultures don't? Maybe that happens there. We just haven't studied enough instances of primitive. And we haven't found it yet. That's possible. But things like cancer also haven't shown up in primitive cultures much. There's a book called, man, I could just give you almost the page number of this book. Let me try to do this real fast. See if I can do this in 10 seconds. Nazi war and cancer. There it is, right there. See if we can look inside. We can go to page 26. 26 or 27, but I won't take it there. Maybe. You can get so many pages out of books these days. They cut us short. Anyway, if you read this book, I think it's like page 24 or 27 or something in there, it'll tell you, this is Princeton University Press. So that's a good source. That's very credible to bring up in a college class. This book will say that from like 1880 to 1940, 50, and their cancer. Now, don't get all freaked out. Okay, all this is just telling some things that the Germans. It's an academic account of some things Germans studied and their crazy medical practices. So in the 1880s to 1950, something there. Cancer was, this is a trick, what I'm about to say. Some of you, I think, might have heard this before. Of course, I don't know if it's true, I'm just saying this is what the book says, okay? Stay empirical here. I don't know if it's true, I haven't seen it, but the book says it. My undergrad degree was anthropology and philosophy, 2 majors, and I studied hunter-gatherers. So I tend to believe this might be true across the... Anyway, the point is, it says in this book, in the 20s, page 20-something, that, explorers were going all over the place in this time. European explorers all over the world. And they were called ethnographers. They would just take notes on everything they saw. They wouldn't analyze, they wouldn't make judgments, they would just take notes. This huge phone book-sized sets of notes on everything they saw primitive people doing. And now these are like treasures, because so much of that's lost now, because civilization replaced primitive life. I don't mean primitive in a derogatory sense. Okay, I mean that in a praiseworthy sense. This book says that explorers would never find this case of cancer anywhere ever. So there's 2 options. 1, it was there, they just didn't see it. Or two, it really wasn't there. And people would call cancer a disease of civilization. That was what it was known as back in the that time frame. Okay. So why am I talking about this? Talking about anorexia. And well, who asked me a question that got me on this? There's too many thoughts stringing together. I can't remember where it started. Well, anyway, isn't that interesting?
You were talking about primitive cultures, and you were, about how things that were not in primitive culture, like anorexia and stuff like that.
Yeah. And then
Now, then you moved on to cancer, and how, my correlation is the fact that, here, the civilization has, anorexia and cancer and all these other issues going on, and you were talking about Prozac going up with technology.
That. Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, so, there's lots of, thank you, very good. I should be remembering this, but, oh well. There's lots of strange things about civilization. It could, things show up that apparently, I'm not totally sure about this, but apparently weren't there in a different state. So yeah, we're talking about being information creatures. So maybe humans aren't. It's just a theory. It's just a thought. Maybe the information age is the fish out of water age. The fish out of water is not in its environment. It's struggling to live, right? So the idea would be to say that maybe humans, looking at what we are, we're really not informational creatures, and maybe we like leisure more. Maybe, well, it depends, person to person. Some people like power, some people like leisure, some people like doing nothing, and some people like socializing, some people don't. But it's just kind of an interesting point to think about, these ideas with primitive culture with respect to us. Based on the idea, it is, but one thing we can say with some confidence, to repeat, humans aren't really, we're very, very poor, inefficient informationally. Okay, some things we're really good at. We're really good at feeling. We're really good at visual things. We're good at fighting. We're good at eating. But gathering information successfully, very poor. The evidence for that is we all fight each other. Take the simplest thing, and we can't figure it out. We all fight with each other over it. Yeah?
So, basically what you're saying is, we're not a bucket holding water, we're a pipe with water going through it.
Yeah, I like it. Very good. Very nice. Yeah. Yeah, we're, in some ways, we're not, we call it little kids sponges. But is the information that they're sponging in correct? Can it be checked out in the world? They'll take in information, but is it correct? So yeah, we're not, to think of ourselves as, buckets full of all this vast knowledge is very, very questionable. If we were good information seekers, there wouldn't be all these religions with these different nuances to them. We'd have one religion because we knew. We have some way of knowing which religion is right, if any of them are. Some of you might say none of them are. So, it's a pretty interesting point. Okay, so yeah.
Using that example, we kind of have to take the assumption that all people will accept all information as equal. And because people don't, we like in this class, we're looking at the moon landing to this, to that. Some people are accepting as true, some people are accepting as not true. And even the question of, can we use our senses empirically or not? So to say that we're not good at information because, to use that example of religion, to me doesn't hold much water simply because I think that's more of a proof that we are good at information. Because people can critically look at, well, I accept this or I don't accept this, versus being a drone and say, okay, well, we all accept this without critically looking at it and determining what's right or wrong. Our decisions are going to be based upon the information that we have at that time.
Yeah, that's true. There are ways with information we can become very proficient. So yeah, that's a good point. I'll agree with you on that. If we couldn't, then we couldn't build a spaceship or a plane or something. There's a lot of information that went into that. Yeah, so good point. But you were talking about the idea of believing that everything's equally true. That's related to a philosophy called postmodernism, which is related to cultural relativism, which we brought up earlier. That's where you say, I don't know which idea is right. All ideas are equally correct because we don't know which is correct. So if over there in some primitive culture they believe that the earth was created by angels that came from Mars. That is equally true as believing the Earth was created from the Big Bang. Both ideas are equally verifiably true, and we don't know which is more correct than the other. So they're equally correct. So that's a little departure from what we've been talking about here that's related to this theory. In my intro to philosophy class, I'll be talking a lot about postmodernism, so that's pretty interesting stuff. So let me keep going here. So experiences that are correct are those that you can make sure are not like the oasis, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so with the oasis, you first see it, but if you were to investigate it further, just by going to a drink from you find that it's an illusion, an empirical experience is something that's not there. This is actually the key to finding out which empirical experiences are correct or not correct. Investigate further into a given empirical experience to find out if it's real or unreal. See, like the extrasolar planet example, you can't do that. I mean, that's what scientists are doing here, Is there really a wild or not? It's so hard to determine what you're seeing. So sometimes this just doesn't even work, but this would be the idea of how to determine which empirical experiences are right. Most are easy. Chalk, I feel, okay, it's real. But some are not. For example, if you see a green leaf, you want to verify that green, this is really there. Perhaps you should look at the leaf in more detail. You want to do this with a magnifier, see if you do. Find out that the green is not there, transparent, blah, blah, blah. Questions? Well, I already said all this, so let's keep going here. But does anybody have any questions? I think we're on 7. I hit return. That chord hit return a bunch of times, so I think, let me get rid of that. Yeah, there's a big space here I created. See, this chord is in the enter key. There it is. Through H senses. Yeah, whatever. Here we go. Now this, some of you are talking about want to know about rationalism? We're going to get into that right here. The opposite of empiricism is kind of a good way to put what rationalism is. So now, ideas versus experiences. But your questions are making this kind of easy though. Yes, bless you. And anybody else in the room. Now compare these examples of leaf and the oasis with, for example, the idea that the universe was created by the Big Bang, or that the universe was created by God. It's probably safe to assert that neither of these are directly verifiable by you. If somebody were asking you to present evidence for those ideas, evidence you can see and verify right now, if it's going to be scientific information, this is what it has to involve. Okay? If somebody asks you to believe in something you can't verify with your senses sometime right now or pretty quick, it's not science. Okay, so going back to NASA, a lot of things we talked about with NASA, a lot of things that are announced with NASA, and not really scientific information. I mean, they may be to a small group, like the scientists there at NASA. Maybe able to verify what the Mars rover is seeing and so forth. But to you, it's just a story on TV because you can't verify it. So to you, it's not scientific. It may be to them, but to the world, it's not. It's a kind of interesting point. So a lot of things that are considered science, really in the classical sense, the way the great philosophers invented science, Francis Bacon, Descartes, and so forth, a lot of things that we call science aren't. We're just told they are. And then we find out 10 years later, oops, it wasn't even true anyway. So now here, look at this here. And get into this section. Probably I chose these examples, Big Bang versus God, because those are often thought of as opposing views. And probably most of you in this class believe one or both of these ideas. Probably. Probably most of you have some religious idea. You might assert that God created the universe. Some of you might say, no, the Big Bang did, or God created the Big Bang. Now the point I'm trying to make here, sorry. Go ahead. Let me get you first.
I mean, we got evidence of God just this weekend when the 49ers thought they won that game.
I think Denard Robinson may prove God.
Where's the God? Robinson was going to see after you made that touchdown.
That's probably the best. That'd be the best proof of God we have. So the Big Bang. Now, both of these, the existence of God and the Big Bang, excluding the Denard Robinson example, probably most of you can't really verify that either of these are true. You've been just simply told that one or both is true. Now, that doesn't mean that they're false or anything like that. It's just those are more examples, like we talked about in this class already so far this semester, are more things that you've just been told about. But you don't really know. If I try to ask, to prove this, that's what we're going to get. People are going to say, oh, how can the tree or the Denard Robinson not be created by God? They're so magnificent, how can they be? That's not a proof. You may think the tree or the quarterback are so incredible they have to have a divine creator. But that's just, somebody else may come along and say, well, I don't think that. So it's just your opinion. Mine against yours, nobody wins. So a proof would have to be something much stronger, where you see something empirically, or you discover something mathematically, which points right to it, which just can't be refuted. Okay? Same with the Big Bang. All of you have been told that the whole universe was the size of an energy point 10, 20 billion years ago. Energy point has no size, and that thing with no size, get this, it started to expand. So the thing that was zero-dimensional, size-wise, in terms of magnitude and size, it was zero-dimensional, like a geometrical point. And then later, oh wow, look at this. It became 3 or 4-dimensional. How does 0 become 3? Okay, maybe it can. Maybe there's some, I'm not saying, maybe there's something we don't see that, that explains all this. But, this is kind of interesting. I mean, there are issues here. We've been just told this stuff. Nobody's verified that we even live in a universe. Okay, you've all been told we live in a universe. Somebody define right now what a universe is.
The thing we live in.
I like that. That's pretty good. That's about the best definition I've heard. The thing we live in, that is poetry. Most people say it's like a set of particles that makes up and they all can interact. There's a set of particles here, 100 million light years across or something, and call this universe 1. Then there's another one over here, call universe 2, and the particles don't interact. So one set is one universe, one set is the other. How do you know that is what we live in? You don't. Okay? Why? Because nobody's seen the boundary of the universe. Nobody even knows what the definition of a boundary of the universe is. Here, you want to know why? Somebody tries to find the boundary of the wall where the stuff stops. Okay, well, you've got 2 options. What's here? 2 options, nothing or something. Okay? So if this is the universe and here's this boundary, go just to the outside of the boundary. If there's nothing that's there, well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it? Because that means that the universe exists in nothing, which is about as sensible as saying there are round squares floating around the room right now with the blue dragon. Okay, so, but if you say there's something there, well, then that something is going to interact with the boundary of the universe. And if something interacts with the boundary of the universe, they're not going to stay separate. They're going to interact. So the stuff out here is part of our universe. There is no such thing as a boundary in that sense. So we can't even define what a universe is. Yeah, oh wait. Who is first? You. Then I'll get you.
Basically made the point that I was just going to ask, regardless of if this is the universe or if this is the energy point, what contains that energy point or that universe?
Yeah, good. I mean, there's other problems too with that, but that's one we're talking about, yeah.
Now, go along with your explanation here. I mean, everybody watch that Men in Black show. We could be all like,
oh, the
ball.
movie?
Yeah, Men in Black.
I love that. You mean the old movie? I love that.
Oh, but they got the sphere, our universe is in a little sphere and they're playing,
Yeah. So yeah, that's what we're talking about, this right here.
Being out there,
Yeah, that's a great movie. That's a good philosophy movie. Some of you conspiracy people too would really like that one as well. Anybody else have anything? So good comments, by the way, if I'm one to judge. So yeah, so this is interesting. I mean, things we've just been told about, I mean, I'm not saying they're not true or something, but very precise thoughts were just given and consequently we just believe. So, continuing on here. You probably can't prove these, blah, 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 blah. Big Bang, or theoretical. Yeah, so these are theoretical ideas. Theory and theory. Unless you sat in your closet and prayed for 10 hours, or you're some Buddhist monk that sat in the monastery for 14 years meditating, you probably have no experience of God. Maybe sometime you were praying, and, for 10 minutes it got warm fuzzy or something. Is that evidence for God or not? I don't know. Maybe it is. Because it's direct experience. That's the important thing about that. So if you're praying and you see a light, well, philosophically, that's important. A philosopher is going to say that's important stuff because you've had an experience of something. Is it real? Is it not? Then you have to go through all that. Is it real? Isn't it real? But you have to do that with everything if you're a philosopher. Is moon landing? You're talking about moon landing stuff. Is that real? Is this real? Is anorexia? What is that? So the important thing is experience. So, but probably most of you have had nothing really. Well, I bet some of you had. I bet there's a number of you in here that have had some. You're religious in some way, and something happens sometime, whether on purpose or by accident. You're walking to the park and bam, I see it all, you know, one of those. I mean, something like that happened to me once, actually.
Almost so hard, like.
Yeah.
Like something saves your life, and you want to make it
Yeah. Yeah, all of us have had strange events that are just way too strange, something greater than the physical events had to be involved. Who said something? I mean, there's all kinds, who's seen like a ghost or something? Nobody? Oh, come on. Okay, anyway, all of you out. Just kidding. Yeah, that's in that movie. Yeah.
What about like the near-death experience?
Oh, yeah, that's the same.
Right, people like,
Yeah, that's a good one. That's, okay, NDE, near-death experience. This is reported all over the place, thousands of years ago and now, all over the world, people unrelated will have an experience where they're physically dead. Brain stops having a response, they're pronounced dead on the table, in the hospital, whatever, and then a minute later, boop, they're back. And everybody's like, whoa, how'd that happen? And they'll come back, they're completely changed in some cases. They'll report an experience that was going down a tunnel, there was a light at the end, it was the creator, whatever, and it was unfathomable. And that's, the best word is ineffable, that's a really good word. It means beyond, can't describe the language. A lot of things are like that. And how do we know this is real, is the question.
Induction.
Okay? What do you mean? I mean, how so?
Well, not that, how many thousands of people
Yeah, okay.
have happened, but,
Yeah, it happens in ancient Greece, and it happens, and there's not people saying, I saw Jesus, and they get it over. No, there's a lot of people that are secret about this, and don't want anybody to know. Is that induction, though? Maybe a little bit. Because you've got repeating instances. But here's the problem. Here's another kind of information. We're on the board space here. It's all personal experience. Okay? Sorry. Personal testimony.
Amen.
That's a very dangerous kind of information. Not saying it's wrong or bad or don't do it or something like that. It's just one of the worst kinds. How do you verify I saw a blue dragon? I saw the ghost. Heard the ghost. How many of you right now, raise your hand, don't think something I hallucinated or I'm making it up or it didn't happen? I'm not going to get offended. Okay, thank you. Good. The reason you question is because what did I give you? I gave you a personal testimony. I could have told you I saw Mickey Mouse or something, All it is just me saying something. Who cares what somebody says? What if I could have shown you the ghost? Then no hands would have gone up. Right there's a little ghost child. Okay. Yeah, a lot of stuff. The Big Bang Theory is like this. It's an account of something that is beyond our sense range.
where would it come from, though? Like somebody's had.
A dream? Oh, that
like that?
Huh?
In the Bible like that?
Yeah. The Buddhist text, the Bible. Yeah. See, now religion's a little bit stronger though, because religion they'll give you maybe not, but they'll give you like Buddhism. They'll give you a technique. They'll say, if you do this, if you go sit in a cave meditating for 3 years, you'll see nirvana. So at least they're telling you how to see what they see. It's not like how they say, I've seen the ghost and I can't reproduce it, I can't show you, or I heard the ghost, I can't show you, can't tell you nothing, sorry. Believe it though. See how that's different? If I could say, okay, I heard the ghost, and if you do this couple things with some kind of effort, you'll hear the ghost too. So it's a little different. So it's not quite as weak, but I know what you're saying, it's I can't show you God right now. I can't make all your minds nirvanic right now. All this. That would be, that's my ghost that I heard. I can hear it, but you can't. So that's about the weakest kind of information there is.
You might be able to pull it up right here.
Huh?
No,
I'm going to move on. Somebody else
Let's go to ghost hunting.
Oh, yeah, I like that stuff. Anybody else have anything? Okay, so where do we leave off here? I don't know. Did you see the difference between theory and empirical? Right here. Sorry, I keep thinking, you're seeing if I was at Henry Ford, there'd be a camera on my hand, you'd see me pointing. So did you see the difference between empiricism and theory here? Between ideas and experiences? Okay? The ghost that was heard, to me is an experience, but to you is just an idea. So, there's an evidence problem. If we have evidence problems, we fight with each other. What if I said, believe me, bastard, I saw the ghost. You're offending me by doubting me. See, because that's an evidence problem. Now some people go like this. Okay, that's called desk pounding. If you can't prove something, what you do is you pound your hand on the desk. Say, believe it, okay, and that hopefully persuades people. Okay, I'll believe you, sure. Okay, so if you have evidence that's clear, you don't have to do that. You can just say, oh, here's my evidence. Believe it if you want. If you don't, I don't care. But here it is. And then you sit back and let them argue with you and say, oh. And then as soon as they get done arguing, you just say, here's the evidence. Right there. You just do it over and over. So that's why I said some of the conspiratorial of you in here will like this class, because that's what you can do all day. With, like, say, Kennedy. If somebody thinks it was, one shooter in the book depository, you just get a video from Oprah Winfrey showing the footage and just say, looks like 2 bullets, 2 directions. And then you just sit back. And they'll be like, no, it can't be, it's impossible, blah, blah, blah. How could it be a secret? How could it be a cover-up? And you just go, oh, because the empirical evidence is, I see it with my eyes, it's better than your theories. See how strong that is? Okay? That's one, I'm illustrating for you one way of how empiricism is stronger than theory. Because people will believe clear empirical evidence over any theory. People will lose any debate when clear empirical evidence is posed over a contradictory theory. A theory that okay, let me explain it in English. If you have some theory about something that's hard to believe, but has the clearest empirical evidence, such as a video of Kennedy getting shot. Hopefully the video is real, right? And so if somebody has theories about what happened with Kennedy, those are going to be weaker in an argument. The person with the video, what you can see, will always have a stronger position than the person with the theories that are different than what the video says. Because why? The person that has the theories may keep believing what they do and not be convinced by the video. That's fine. But the theory, the ideas, can't attack the visual experience. Because visual experience has more power. The experiences can attack theories in this scenario when the experience is very verifiable, very credible, but theories can't attack the experience. Okay, so there's lots of examples like that. Science does a lot of this. They'll come out with a scientific theory, and nobody will believe it, and they'll just say, "Here's the evidence." And then through time, if the evidence is there, people will go with the evidence that they can see and abandon the theories. That's one reason religion is, people say religion's on the downswing. I don't know if that's really true or not. But people say religion's changing and so forth. And some people say because in the scientific age, there's a little more skepticism around and so forth. So maybe that's attacking religion. In my opinion, I don't think culture is skeptical. Yeah, I think people just believe whatever they want to believe. And a lot of scientific theories turn into religion. Have you ever seen an evolutionist fight with a Christian? They don't have any evidence the Christian will have a bunch of stuff and the evolutionist will have a bunch of stuff, and neither of them really have sufficient evidence to be in that debate. But they'll say evolution's a fact. It's called the theory of evolution, but they'll say fact, which doesn't make sense because it's called the theory of evolution. Same with Christianity, so yeah. Anyway, so big difference between theory and empiricism here, which is very important. Blah, blah, blah. Let's go right here. Okay, so there's a big problem here, though. How can we be so confident about empiricism when empiricism is so loaded with errors? Man, that's the best point. That's what everybody's sitting here thinking, right? Some people are bringing up stuff directly related to that. Most people believe the world is basically just like they perceive. This is called naive realism, or direct realism. It's a philosophical position that professional philosophers actually write books about, okay? We'll say, no, the world is just like we see it. The empirical errors are very, very rare. Maybe that's true. I don't know. I don't think it is, but who knows? If we're starting to give this handout, this position would have to reject. Well, you don't have to. I should probably put that softer. This is a position we may want to reject, I should say. At least for some of the experiences we have to. But to return, because we've already pointed out so many empirical errors. But we'll have to return to the original question to start the subsection. How do we explain empiricism is such a great theory in light of all the errors, such as the sun appearing to move across the sky, the transparent leaves, the unsmooth paper? Remember, did we talk about the paper last time? Mm-hmm. We did? Hang on one second. Let me try to do something fast again. I think I keep referring to something, I wonder if it's online. These are all the things on this list. The sun appears to move across the sky, the earth appears flat, the paper appears smooth and white. So, a piece of paper, like this smooth white piece of paper, oh, it's smooth and white. All I need to do is magnify it a few hundred times, and I see it does not smooth at all, and it hardly is even continuously white. You know, so this is how the surface of the paper looks. Look at it, it's like, you know, and then there'll be little things that are off-white here, and a little black spot there, and so forth. So, your senses just aren't precise enough to see things as they are. So the smooth whiteness is an illusion, in a sense, really. The leaves appear green is the next one, right here. Oh yeah, this is an interesting one. Surgery can stimulate epilepsy. I don't know if this can happen. I know this can happen in epilepsy, where you have brain surgery, and you can have brain surgery where the person's conscious because the brain doesn't feel pain. And I think they do that, usually have people stay conscious. That makes sure everything's going okay. So you can zap someone's brain, and all of a sudden they'll say, "Mother," or something, and they'll literally all of a sudden not be in the room, and their consciousness will go to another place, so to speak. And they're having an experience of being with mom or whatever. So you can, you know, that's pretty interesting. That's almost like, remember the Matrix with Neo, when he's in the little bathtub and stimulating his nervous system to think he's in a dream world? It's kind of the same idea. Yeah.
Well, isn't that true though? They can do that.
Oh yeah.
I thought you were saying it.
No, epileptics. I think probably you could do this with all people, but as far as I know, I might be wrong about this. They may be able to know how to do it with all people now, but epileptics you can do this with readily.
I know that you train like when you're studying for an exam or whatever, the way that you memorize it, it's still here to grow on your brain. And by touching one of the pieces, it brings back like a memory or something.
Ah.
So.
Yeah, there you go, yeah.
They do like a neurostimulation for Parkinson's patients too, where they actually insert wires and probes in the brain. They keep them awake, so that way that, you know, the neurologist doesn't hit the wrong spot, you know? And so they make them, you know, do certain tasks while they're awake, while the doc's down there. They put these transmitters in the brain, so that way it reduces, you know, their, you know, shaking and everything else.
Yeah, it sounds kind of interesting, really. Hopefully this will become like a commercial technology, you know, buy in some of this stuff. You know, you could all of a sudden, think if you could just not be where you are. I mean, how many of you would do that? Think if you could just put on some invisible glasses right now. You're sitting here like this, staring at me. This is great. But really, your mind is like at 3 planets over. I mean, that's the possibility here.
Like the Matrix.
Yeah.
We just hooked up to a machine.
Yeah, similar idea. Well, this wouldn't be. It's the exact same idea, except instead of plugging something into your nervous system to get you to think you're somewhere else, maybe you could just put a helmet on. That would change your brain to do that or something, you know? I mean, I'm buying one as soon as they're available. Virtual reality kind of idea. But a little stronger. Virtual reality is like a visual idea where you are in a visionscape, which seems real, but it's not. That's kind of like TV. Or something. I'm talking about, you know, like you really, your consciousness is taken over. And you think you're at the bar in the plant. You know, remember the Star Wars bar in the second? Is it? No, not the. Oh yeah, sure, that one. Let's go with that one. In the 1977 Star Wars movie, in that year, I want to go there, or something. Anyway, any questions? Who else wants to go there? Yeah, exactly. So dreams are often viewed as being perfectly real while you're dreaming. Now that's interesting. We all had dreams where we woke up and said, "Oh, wow, I'm glad that's just a dream. I'm glad the dragon's not chasing me or something." The point is, you thought it was real when you were dreaming. Okay? So that's an empirical error, because you thought an empirical world was there and it wasn't. Sorry?
I called my mom the next morning, like, did I talk to you last night?
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
It's so real. Like,
Yeah.
Like this conversation?
Yep.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I've had situations like a couple days later, I'm like, I want to tell my wife something, but I don't know if I dreamed it or not. You know, and then I'll say it and she'll be like, what are you talking about? Something like that. And the point of that is your empirical experiences. It's kind of interesting, really. We're used to thinking about, now so far in this discussion we've kind of assumed our empirical experiences are we're awake and we're, you know, blah, blah, blah. No, we're talking, empirical experiences are, you know, when you're a dream. When you're in it, you may think it's an empirical experience. If that kind of stuff happens, then the empiricism is blurred. Does it just happen when we're awake? Is it just restricted to ordinary consciousness? No and no. It's a very interesting issue. If you're following me. We'll talk more about that later. I'm kind of going fast over it because we'll hit it later. Things far away if you're smaller than they are. So, If I put this piece of chalk right there, like that, and then I go like this, it appears big and then small. That's an illusion. His senses are lying to him. The chalk's always the same size, roughly. So, there's, matter appears solid. Oh, this is a good one. Matter apparently is not solid. We'll, it feels like it is, see? But we'll talk more this semester how both science and philosophy very, very easily show that this is an illusion, solidity. It's not an illusion that your hand is moving and stops. Yeah, that's, fine. But that you feel something solid, the solid feel, that solidity is not quite there. If you could magnify this board down real, real small, you'd find it's made of little energy points, which don't have solidity. So the board itself is made of things that aren't solid. So where does the solidity come from? Your mind may create it. Yeah?
With glass, that's the same process with glass, how, like you go to Henry Ford Museum, glass is supposed to be always continually in motion. And like you look at glass, it's like 100, 150 years old, it has settled to the bottom, and it's really thick at the bottom, and at the top it's actually like, less than paper thin, and it'll actually start getting holes for it.
Yeah, who's seen a airplane propeller, or a fan? 1 minute it looks like this, very solid, okay? And then you turn it on, and it becomes invisible. It's still there, but you can't see it, and then your little chalk comes and goes, ow! Just kidding, not really. But you got to teach the child to be careful because it's there. So, optical illusions are very, I don't, so the point of bringing this up is this what matter is like at the little level, the little building blocks that make up everything, is it's really just not quite there. In the same way that this can vanish because it moves in a certain way, vanish from sight. So in a more extreme sense, little particles that make up everything can vanish. Yeah?
You don't need to ask if you dream something and then 3 days later it comes true.
Yeah. I chose 3 for a reason because that's something happened to me. Go ahead.
So what about the instances where people go and see, like, the psychics or do tarot card readings or
Yeah.
the horoscope or something along those lines? Are there miracles and
Believe it or not, our next set of notes that I'm going to give you has some of that in it. So when you see a question about magic, show up not pulling a rabbit out of the hat, like real kind of magic. If something's going to come up in the next note, ask that same question again. But let me give you a 10-second answer. If it predicts, it checks out. It just has to predict. If whatever can predict has power. Science can predict, great. If induction can predict, great. If magic or tarot cards, you said, that's a prediction method. If they predict, sure. Most people don't have any idea if they do or don't because they've never done it or they don't know how to do it or something. So, but, if things like that were real, there's just unfathomable power. Because that's what everyone wants to do, predict things, stock market, stuff like that. You want to be able to know the future. So there's all kinds of errors here, right here. And if empirical analysis involves so many errors, then why is empiricism such an important theory, period? This is a very important question which may make empiricism seem pointless, but there's actually a simple answer. But we have to first discuss rationalism. Now, rationalism is the opposite of empiricism. It says if you want to know if things are true or not, don't use your senses, use thought, some types of thought, philosophical thought or whatever, to try to get to the bottom of things, and that should work. Okay? Now, ancient philosophers such as Plato were very aware of the problems of empiricism and looked the other direction. They told us that there's a huge difference in what we think we see and what is real, which is true. We just gave examples of how empiricism fails. Okay? The propeller. It's not invisible. It's there. Okay? So, pure thought reveals what is real. If you reject empiricism, this might be an option you go to instead. If you really want to know what's true and so forth, you got to have a method to do so. Maybe this is your method if you don't like empiricism. If you really think long and hard enough about reality, your thought process will reveal the truth, capital T, about reality. This is a philosophical technique called rationalism. That's what rationalism is. Okay? Opponents of this idea would perhaps assert that rationalism is just more discipline of theory making, that's prone to errors already pointed out. Yeah, so it's theory making, so theory making has problems too. Well, let's, in other words, since empirical deceptions exist and are common, we can never be sure of things with empiricism. A different mode of knowing is needed in such as logical thought. Plato asserted that so very good philosopher, Plato, old guy, 2,500 years ago, really, really interesting person. Plato asserted that empirical in sense knowledge is always changing, and thus is inferior to precise, unchanging analysis such as mathematics. That's a good point, you know. Empirical information is always changing. See something, you know, you see a star, you see a plant, and you develop a theory, scientific theory, on what is going on there, photosynthesis or whatever process you're trying to describe, you empirically observe, the theory is going to change. Someone's going to come along and uproot your theory. That is the nature of science. Do some observations, develop a good theory. 10 years later, some punk PhD student's going to come along and destroy all your stuff. Go talk to Einstein. Well, he's dead now, but he came out with all his good work. Quantum physics started attacking it almost right as he was creating this. So, Newton came out with all his work, and Einstein uprooted all that. I think we talked about that already. Yeah. So, that's a good point. So therefore, this sort of information appears to be very much superior to something like, okay, so if you're a rationalist, you hold that theory making, some kind of super disciplined theory making would be far superior to empiricism.